up, everybody? We're back with another review for an Invincible comic book. This is The Heroes Reforged, your one-stop shop for comic book reviews. Today,
That's our
reading,
tagline. That's our
boom,
tagline.
Invincible, Volume 10, Who's the Boss? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Find out.
Full spoilers ahead. If y'all haven't been reading
man.
Invincible with us, you're massively missing out. I've read this before. So has Augustine. We did a reread. Adam has never read it before. Adam, we got to start with you.
Gotcha, mama.
Hit us with your overall thoughts. Volume 10, brother. What'd you think?
It's in the top 3 of my favorite. Easily. Easily. I shared a panel with you guys in our little chat, and it's a moment, it's a very intense moment between Cecil and Mark. And I think that was like, I mean, everything leading up to that point was really tense and really crazy.
Yeah.
But that was the turning point in the comic book where I thought, like, wow, we're going into uncharted territory, and this is going to get super crazy. It was amazing. Like the artwork, everything, the storytelling. It's one of those stories that you read, or part of a story that you read, and you could literally, like, I don't know, if I randomly gave even just one of these 5 or 6 issues that are in there, if I picked this up randomly at a comic book store and I read any one of these 5, I would immediately have to grab like the whole series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I got to the end of this and I was like, fuck, this might be my favorite one so far.
Yeah.
And that's such a strong statement to say. But I feel like if you take a character like Spider-Man, for example, in his comic book series, The Amazing Spider-Man since the 60s, you could grab some issues from Steve Ditko being the artist in the 60s. You could grab some issues of John Romita Sr. being the artist in like the 60s, 70s. You could grab a handful of issues in the 80s, definitely some stuff in the 90s, each one of these eras. And you could grab a handful of Spider-Man issues and go, this is quintessential Spider-Man. Like, this is pure. When people talk about Spider-Man comics, you know, a little run of a story, you can grab some great moments in his history. And I feel like this is quintessential Invincible, like across the whole series. Like it kind of perfectly sums up why I love this, why it's my favorite comic book series of all time, superhero series especially, because it's just like it's got it all, man. It's got the Mark Grayson stuff, the family drama, the relationship with Eve, finally,
Everything,
a new costume.
They literally, like, they don't leave anything out. That's why, like, this is literally, if this is like, I don't even know. I mean, this is like getting an MP3 album back in the day, and it had all the greatest hits in it, because it really does. It has everything that's led up to this point, and it touches on some new things, and it starts to shift some relationships in really interesting places. I've been in love with Eve. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Full stop.
No, but I mean, like, there's just like moments that those two characters have, and the things that she says to him, because he's just like not doubting, but he's very much like, sorry, I'm just like not here. And she's like, I get it. I'm on the same side as you. You know, I understand exactly what you're going through. I'm like, man, just to have, it's so different from what his previous relationship was. And like, he's responsible for screwing that up quite a bit. But like, for him to now have somebody who like really gets it, really truly gets it, it's like very refreshing. And now I feel like that's going to be like almost the only thing that he has at this point, because his other relationships are not going so well.
The Mark and Eve thing in this book, and then I'm going to kick it over to you, Augustine, for your thoughts on like on this reread. But just real quick, Invincible and Adam Eve in this book especially, they give me the vibe of like Peter Parker and Mary Jane when they were married. And it's the same thing, dude. That's why I love MJ. That's why I love Mary Jane Watson as a character, because you get that same sort of two mature adults that are like trying to figure this out. She understands Peter's life, but he understands like he needs to be there for her. He needs to love her. He needs to, you know, it was just this when that relationship was going, again, when they were married, before the devil took it away. Comics are weird. It was great. It was great. But and the funny thing is that Ryan Ottley, the artist for Invincible, when he was done working on Invincible, when the series wrapped and he went over to Marvel, he was doing Spider-Man. And the first thing that happens in his like first story arc that he draws is that Peter gets back with Mary Jane. And it's this like perfect, like, oh, the guy that drew Mark Grayson and Adam Eve for years, you know, this relationship is now drawing another like very supportive and wonderful human being, redhead with a superhero character. Anyway, Augustine, you reread it. What'd you think, dude?
I I when I first read this part of the comic book, it didn't hit me as much as it hit me this time. I feel like this section of the comic book is like, you know how when you have like a favorite musical artist and they put out an album that every track is a fucking banger. I feel like this is that for this comic right now. Not to say that
Yeah.
it's not going to get better, not to say that everything bangs, but I feel like Otley, the artist, is firing on all cylinders, but Kirkman also really understands his characters. He's really starting to build some cool dynamics between the relationships between people, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And there's a huge mega payoff if you've been watching our videos and you've been reading Capes Incorporated, Super Patriot, Brit, which is a fucking wild roller coaster. And all of these people, because they all have special places in this book, that the first and I think this is what happened the first time I read it through. I had no idea who Astonishing Wolfman is, or
Mhm.
what's is that his name? Astonishing Wolfman.
Yeah.
Um,
Astounding Wolfman.
See, I keep making that mistake. Astounding Wolfman. And like now that I know and I've spent time with all those characters, it made this comic so much better. Just seeing those
Yeah.
panels where they were each handling their own situation and then they're all trapped underground by Doc Seismic. It's
Mhm.
just it was really cool to see all of that stuff.
It's like going to an
By
Avengers
the
movie
way,
and not watching any of the other movies.
I know.
Right,
By the
exactly. At
way,
this point, that's what it
I
feels like.
I gotta mention this for Doc Seismic. When I looked ahead at this volume and knew that it
Mhm,
was a showdown between Mark and Cecil, but also that Mark was getting a new costume, last week's video, I
yeah.
was like, "There's gonna be some seismic changes," and then Adam was like, "Doc
Mhm,
Seismic," and I was like,
mhm,
"Maybe,"
mhm.
but in my head, I'm like, "I don't think he's in this." He's
Yeah.
definitely in it. He's like, it's awesome how good he is in
Yeah,
it.
That's
Great.
amazing.
yeah,
So that was really,
right.
really funny. And then I feel like, just second note, I feel like I let you guys down and our readers that have been reading along with us. I should have known, but these two comics aren't really listed on a lot of like Invincible reading orders. But
Mm.
when you look at those splash pages that Augustine was describing with different characters, Wolfman, Capes, even Guardians of the Globe, that they're very, in a funny way, it says Guardians of the Globe appear
Mhm.
occasionally in
Yeah, I
Invincible.
love
Yeah,
that.
Which
yeah,
is great.
yeah.
There's two characters, there's two panels that like we haven't really read any. We haven't read any Savage Dragon, and Savage Dragon is a
Right.
long running series. I think almost as long as Spawn, like from the '90s to now. And it's writer artist Eric Larson, and it's been just him this entire time. It's this amazing accomplishment.
Wow.
But like we haven't read any Savage Dragon. Maybe we should have read like the volume one, to just understand the character. And then when we see him in this, I mean, he's appeared in Invincible before. He was at the Guardians of the Globe funeral
Yeah.
with Omni-Man and everything. So Robert Kirkman, from the beginning of Invincible, has borrowed some of these creator-owned characters and asked if he could use them, and it's all cool and copacetic. The second one is a team called Dynamo 5, which like
Dynamo 5, yeah.
when they appear in this, they only had maybe one or two volumes of comics out. Like they were a new team that Image was putting out. And I feel like I dropped the ball. I was like, we should have read Dynamo 5, Volume 1 or
Hector,
something.
you are
Like I
1000% forgiven.
I still may do that just on my own to figure out, like, is it
Mhm.
worth, like, how much does
Where
it
it
tie into,
goes.
where it goes or whatever. Because I don't know how much more of Dynamo 5 or Savage Dragon, honestly, we'll see in the rest of Invincible.
Right,
And
right.
Augustine, I think you can back me up on that. But
Yeah.
it's still awesome to see these characters, seeing Brit, seeing just to see all the superheroes, like when they're all captured by
So
Doc
cool.
Seismic in these little
Yep.
pods. It's
It's
like
really cool.
there
Really,
is a
really cool.
living, breathing Image superhero
Universe.
universe here
Well,
that
and I think
is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and when I think that, like, even though a lot of people will say, like, well, it's not really required reading because it's not part of the main continuity of the timeline, I
Mhm.
would argue against that because it makes those moments that much more impactful. You see all
Mhm.
those
Right.
heroes and you're like, I know their story, I know where they came from, I
Yeah.
know who they are, I know what their motivations are for the most part, and like I know how they're connected to other characters because I mean, even a character like Donald, he's so interactive when he's with Cecil, but then he's also very interactive with Brit and in Brit's story, and like
Mhm.
you find out things and you get to know the character more. And I think
Yeah.
that to me is really rewarding when you see those panels and you see all those characters. You're like,
Yeah.
I've been through each of your stories, almost all of
Mhm.
you. And so
Yeah.
again,
Mhm.
it's just that well-roundedness. And I think because Invincible has an ending, it's finite, it's much easier to do it for this type of
Yes.
a comic book. Obviously, when you're dealing with Marvel and DC and their general universes where everything splinters off, yeah, it's really tough to commit to reading 8 different Batman books at the same time just to understand how these stories interweave. But, you know, 1 to 2 volumes at most for maybe 5, 6 different characters, I feel like that's very manageable. And I feel like it just gives you a better well-roundedness of the world. And it is a little bit nice to take a break from the main Invincible story, because once you get back into it, like with this,
It's awesome.
holy crap, it's so strong.
Oh yeah, baby boy. And so we have to talk about that. So we have to talk about the 3 main things that happen. First, I think not the lesser of, but one of the more minor, not even minor. I don't even know how to categorize this. We got the origin of Cecil.
Yes.
We got to talk about that. Oh,
bangers
shit.
Again,
this,
with
Brit. This series with Brit and Donald.
Yeah.
But the 2 bangers are the fight between Cecil and Mark, where he goes, "I will kill you," and is choke holding Cecil, and Oliver murdering the Mauler twins and having no remorse. Discuss, guys, because this is
first. Let's go to. I loved getting Cecil Stedman's origin.
Yes.
And I love reading this because I'm hearing Walton Goggins from the show. And so now Cecil is like even more of a favorite character of mine. Love this character. So I just love getting that little secret origin, especially after reading Brit, and we got the secret origin of Brit. And in the past, Invincible, the series, has done that with like Adam Eve and Rexplode and all these different characters. It was great to see how he kept the skin there.
Yeah.
As a reminder, I'm like, perfect origin for it's very Nick Fury. You know, this character is like a spoof of that type of a character. But also that origin kind of justified, and we have to talk about that because his origin is now tied into every decision he's made up to this point. And I believe him when he says, "I'll do anything to protect this world, even if it means being the bad guy, because I'm either the guy who saves the world or a good guy. They're not always the same." And
that
his
was
predecessor
a key line.
told him that key line. So like, I like the character, but I also agree with Mark. That's what we have to talk about. How did you guys feel about the origin? And then Mark's decision to not deal with this guy who's dealing with D.A. Sinclair and the Reaniman and or even Darkwing 2, who was a murderer. You know, there's just so much going on.
I think first of all, I want to say that, like, I think that origin comes at the perfect time in the book, because the origin is very reflective of the conversations that he's having with Mark. And so you get the origin of that perspective, and you get to see what happens and why. Because going into this volume, there was no hint that this type of turn was going to happen. And you know that eventually there's going to be some tension because of what Cecil's doing, but I didn't know it was going to be to the tens like this. So I think, like, having that origin drop when it does, it immediately tries to in some way contextualize and get you behind the character in some way, or at least attempt to make his decisions and him and his attitude in some ways be a bit empathetic towards the character. But I think, like, at the, you know, I mean, I'm reading and I'm thinking, like, is this really Cecil? Like, is it, like, what's the true motivation here? What is the outcome of this ultimately going to be? Do I agree with Cecil or not? And I think by the end of the book, because you see kind of Mark's journey and what he goes through right now in this current time, I'm like, I understand why Mark is doing what he's doing, and I'm backing him, and I want to be in his corner, and I want to believe that he's doing the right thing. Will that come back and bite him in the ass?
I mean, it already kind of did, because he's having to deal with his mom calling him when she sees something on the news, like, Mark. This
and I love the fact that he has that inner monologue with himself of like, now that I'm like not, you know, not working with Cecil, I have to kind of like do things in this kind of underground weird way, and I'm patrolling, you know, and I love all that.
But there's one saying that kind of goes, if you go outside and everybody you meet is an asshole, does that mean that maybe you're the asshole? Like, so it's something like that. I know I butchered it, but not to say that Mark is wrong, because I believe Mark is correct. He's standing up. You should not allow murderers and villains. You should not be working with murderers and villains. But at the same time, we don't understand the kind of pressure that Cecil is under to make things right, because Cecil is looking out for the greater good, right? And Oliver kind of reflects that as well.
Yeah.
Oliver murdering the Mahler twins.
Hey,
Oliver says,
"Hey, we'll get to that. That's a whole nother."
Well,
Dude.
yes, that is a whole, but they all kind of go together because
Yeah.
if Cecil were to talk to Oliver, I think Oliver would side with Cecil at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's two sides of the coin. So what I'm trying to say is morally, I line up with Mark. Murdering is bad. You don't work with murderers. But if I was thinking tactically and trying, like if my family was involved in something that I knew I could have handled if I just would have made a deal with somebody who I don't necessarily agree with, but I knew they had resources to help, how would I feel if I failed at that? Or if what if something happened to my family that I could have prevented by just like biting my tongue and just saying, hey, you know, but then again, biting your tongue is like biting your tongue towards a murderer, you know? So it's a really tough spot to put Cecil in. And
it's that Venn diagram of the macro and the micro, and you're like, what's the right choice here?
I think, and it's such a gray spot.
It is. I think ultimately the book is siding with Mark, even in this one volume, and we are going to see the effects of his decision later. But even in this one volume, because the main thing that happens in this, and this is why I love this book, because Robert Kirkman knows it's not real, man. It's a fucking comic book. Like you're writing it to further your morals or ethics or ideals or story or message. And that's why it really pisses me off when comic book fans are like, oh, Batman should kill, or Superman, it's okay if he kills, because I'm like, they're not real. If you're going to have any of these characters remain true to the idea, have it be those characters. There's other characters you can tell that kind of story with. There's Punisher. There's all these different characters. And Cecil Stedman is a Nick Fury, and Nick Fury is not Captain America. Nick Fury does this shit in the shadows because he knows he's not Captain America. He knows he's not Spider-Man. He knows he's not these characters. And I think that when the book puts it back in Mark's face, when Oliver's like, didn't you kill Angstrom Levy? Didn't you kill him? Or I think maybe even Cecil does it too. He's like, that was different. That was an accident. And then Oliver's like, well, it was an accident when I killed the Mahler twins.
Yeah.
The fact that the book revealed that Angstrom was alive. I went
just about to talk about that.
I went, oh shit. First of all, it's like, it is the most comic booky bullshit, you know, soap opera reveal that I love. But secondly, all it does is strengthen Mark's original point, his point of view. Killing is wrong because now, oh, you know what? Turns out Mark's not a murderer. So he still went through the effects of going through of doing that and like dealing with it and having it change him. And now he is this way with Oliver, and he's trying to be extra careful, and he's trying to pull back his punches, and he doesn't mean to like slap somebody and have Titan fall on the ground. And oh man, I was trying to, you know, I'm sorry, I'm stronger now. I'm stronger now. I got to get better. So I think that the comic book would have been more gray if it said, yeah, Mark killed somebody, but now he's trying to tell Oliver not to kill. But it
they literally
that
said,
ultimately, you're right. So it is siding with
Mark.
him. And we even had Mark doubt himself when Oliver asked the questions. He's like, do you agree with some of Dad's motives? And then Mark's like, sometimes.
I know.
Like, holy crap,
I
dude.
know.
Holy crap. But
I know.
Also, you have to think about like the emotional state that he was in. Like, he was being pressured from all sides. He had just broken his relationship with Cecil and he had broken up with Amber, and now he's got this fresh relationship with Eve, and there's so much stuff going on that man, like you got to look at everything objectively at some point. But I think you're right, Hector. Ultimately, the comic book does side with Mark, because Oliver towards the end kind of comes back and says, I think I see your perspective on this. And we also
was he being truthful? But was he being truthful?
That last panel.
So that's the thing. That last panel, we don't know, right? Because he did have his sneaky eyes on something. Man. It's kind of up in the air. But I think that's also the brilliance of this book is that like I don't think Robert Kirkman meant for us to take it this deeply, but what he put down here was fucking incredible. Like it's just it's so good the way he's interweaving all these thoughts of morality with a comic book that started off honestly like really fun and cheesy. And like at the like think back to issues, you know, the early issues before issue 12. This comic book was fun. It was kind of cheesy. We were getting to know the character. He was getting to know himself.
Speaking of the beginning, speaking of the beginning of the comic, I didn't even realize this until I read the sketches in the back, but the dragon who Omni-Man fought in like the first issue.
Yeah.
Where he was like in Hong Kong or something, or he was in Tokyo. I forget where he was. Where he's
Wasn't
fighting
it in Italy?
I can't remember.
No,
well, maybe it would. Maybe it
was in the show.
Yeah.
Oh, it was in the show. Sorry.
There was
in Italy in the show.
A dragon that Omni-Man was fighting, and then Debbie was like, "Oh, I hope he brings me back something. I've never been there." I think that's what it was. Is Mr. Liu this like drug, you know, not drug, but like crime lord boss that that's in this book, which I think was really cool. I also want to mention one moment, and I'm gonna have you put up the panel here, Augustine, because I love this.
Yeah, go for it.
But the moment where Eve tells Rex, "Oh, I'm dating Mark now," and Rex is like,
yeah.
Hey, that's really great. I'm really happy for you. And she's like, when did you
stop
being a total jerk? And he has this little, plus the fact that Rex, you guys, immediately sided with Invincible. Immediately. When Cecil Stedman showed up and Mark was telling him what was going on, he immediately was like, oh, I got you, bro. I got you, pal. And was throwing his little like bombs. Like this is the beginning. Rex is one of my favorite characters. Rex Blode is awesome. And he is a massive asshole. Or at least he was.
I just love that pose. I love that pose. He's just like,
maybe I'm growing. Maybe I'm, you know, I think it's awesome. And hearing Mantzoukas was great. So
this was a monthly comic, correct?
Yeah.
It just did one issue a month.
Yeah.
So I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
This is what 2 years into the book, a little over 2 years.
Oh,
at this point, right?
53.
So it's like a year, 2 years and some
No.
change.
No.
If it's one a month.
48. Oh, well,
we're all very good at math, you guys. We're very, very good at math.
I think it's 80 years, Adam. I think
splice this up to just cut to the answer.
Oh no, wait, sorry. That'd be about 3 years at this point. Three years.
Yeah.
Yes. I think like 52 issues in, you're seeing, like you were saying, Augustine, the tone is kind of shifting. It's basically, my point is, like, you're seeing now the progression of Robert Kirkman's age is starting to like find its way into the writing, where it's becoming more and more mature. And I think like that's kind of what you would hope from something that lasts as long as this damn comic book did. Is like, you want those relationships and those characters to progress and the themes to become more and more mature and be, I don't want to necessarily say more grounded, because it still is a superhero comic book, but you still want to make it like relatable, and you want people to read it and to find ways to look at that and go like, damn, that is like, I mean, it just gives you more opportunities and more reasons to side with the character and to really like feel like their actions are justified.
And the book that we just read, just real quick, the book we just read was published first in 2009, and the comic itself started in like 03. So it's like 5 or 6 years. So it's more like a bi-monthly book, I would say, on the schedule.
This chapter of the book just feels like a classic at this point. Like having read it, I was just like, man, I just want to just plow ahead and just keep going, because and I say this every episode at this point, that like I just can't stop reading it. Because it's hitting such a good stride.
I'm going to try to make you feel better. Let's keep the stride going. The next book we're reading is Invincible Volume 11, folks. Happy Days is what it's called. Will it be happy?
I see Alan the Alien.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
who's that person smiling there, Hector, at the bottom?
That's Mark right there. We got some Happy Days. Oh, right here?
Is that Debbie?
Oh, this would be, that's Debbie.
Happy? Yeah,
that's
Happy
the best
Days,
character in the comic book, Debbie.
Yep.
But then what's this over here?
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Oh, man.
What?
What? I already skimmed forward, and this next is spicy.
Woo! I'm excited. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for us for this volume of Invincible. Go read Invincible Volume 11, Happy Days. Let us know in the comments below how you're enjoying the series. Where do you stand? Are you Team Cecil? Are you Team Mark? What do you think of Oliver's new name and costume, Kid Omni-Man? Would you have preferred Omni Boy? Not a great name. I don't know.
Kid Omni-Man.
Yeah.
Both of those names are janky.
You need a consultant on that.
Yeah. Something. What should his name have been? And let us know about your favorite moment in the book. So tell us in the comments below. Keep the discussion going in our Discord. Come join it. It's awesome. We'll see you guys next week with another comic book review. Bye.